All right, so these are our trig functions that we've already talked about. We've already talked about sine, cosine, tangent, and we also kind of briefly mentioned those reciprocal functions of the cosecant, secant, and cotangent, okay? Those are all just the reciprocal functions of the function that's right directly above it. So this cosecant right below sine is technically 1 over sine of theta. That is what cosecant is. Secant is actually just 1 over cosine of theta. And then cotangent is just 1 over the tangent of theta. Okay, now you're given a picture here where we've got a radius of r, and then we've got our height, which is our y coordinate, and our x value, which is, our horizontal distance there is our x value, okay? So we can still think about sine, cosine, tangent in terms of like SOHCAHTOA. However, I want us to get in the habit of thinking whenever I ask you for the sine of an angle, sine is your y value at that point, okay? So sine is y values, which is why your equation here is y over r, where your r value in your unit circle is 1 there, okay? Cosine, I want you to think of x values whenever you hear cosine. Hence the x over your radius in our unit circle, which is 1. And then tangent is just going to be your y value over your x values, because tangent is sine over cosine. So if sine is my sine is my y values, cosine is my x values, it should be your y over your x. Okay? I always remember that because x comes before y in the alphabet, cosine comes before sine in the alphabet, so pretty straightforward to keep those kind of separate. Okay? All right, we are going to skip those 2 examples. These reciprocal identities, I actually just forgot that they're written there, but we just wrote them up above as well. So your sine of theta is just, again, that 1 over cosecant. So that's like the opposite. They're each opposites of each other. Cosecant is 1 over sine. Yeah, so we can use those reciprocal identities, and we'll do some stuff with that next class. So we're going to skip the rest of those examples on that page, and moving on, we're going to skip this page as well. We'll come back to it. And then I want us to spend the rest of our time we're going to spend on this chart right here. I'm going to start by color coding a few things here, because we know that my sine value and my cosecant value, those are just reciprocals of each other, okay? My value that I get for sine is going to be, for cosecant, the reciprocal of that. For cosine, what's the reciprocal of cosine going to give me? The secant. And then tangent is going to give me cotangent, okay? So once I find the first 3, all I got to do is flip my fraction to find the last 3. We're going to start with the 3 columns in the middle there, and then we'll end with the those are our special cases of 0 and pi over 2 at the end. So I'm going to start with theta is equal to pi over 6. Okay, so I'm going to draw down below here in my first quadrant. Oops. Pi over 6. That's what we're looking at. Pi over 6. So pi over 6 is going to look something like this. That's equal to pi over 6. So I think about kind of closing that triangle there. And now from this angle of pi over 6, I need to figure out what my sine, cosine, tangent, and the reciprocal functions are. So if I look up on the board here, I've got my 30, 60, 90 triangles. If this is 1, that means that my short leg is 1/2, and my hypotenuse is the square root of 3 over 2. So if I were to label the coordinate at pi over 6, that coordinate would be square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. You guys agree? Okay, now that I have that coordinate, I can answer all of those questions. Okay, if I want to find what the sine of this angle is, well, sine is at my x or my y value? Y value. So sine is just 1/2. Now, let's go to the reciprocal function of that. Reciprocal of 1/2 is just going to be 2. Okay, cosine. Cosine is my x value. So cosine is going to be the square root of 3 over 2, which means that secant is going to be 2 divided by the square root of 3. Okay, now, in your previous math classes, if you got something with a square root in the denominator, what were you supposed to do? Rationalize it, okay? In this class moving forward, you guys have already been tested over that. You know how to do that. Just leave it like that, okay? 2 over square root of 3. You'll make less mistakes trying to simplify it, and it'll be easier for me to grade, okay? The only time I do want you to simplify is if it's like square root of 20. We can simplify the square root of 20, right? Okay, I want you to simplify that to be 2 square root of 5. Okay, that's the only simplifying of rationals that I want you guys to do. Okay? All right, lastly is tangent. Tangent is my y value over my x value. Okay? So tangent is technically 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2. That's my y's over my x's, which would equal 1/2 times 2 over the square root of 3. So those 2's that simplify out, and my tangent is 1 divided by the square root of 3. Again, we don't need to rationalize it. We can leave it like that as our answer. And also another reason for that is because now when I go to cotangent, I just need to reverse that fraction, right? What's cotangent going to be? Just the square root of 3.
And how do we know those numbers that you put, again, like the 1 1/2?
So the 1/2 and the square root of 3/2, yes, because for my unit circle, I know my radius is 1.
Yeah.
So then I can figure out my side lengths of my 30, 60, 90 triangle based off that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, let's try pi over 4 next. Okay, pi over 4. So I'm going to draw myself a picture of what pi over 4 looks like. Pi over 4 is going to be exactly in between in that first quadrant there. Okay, so that's my 45, 45, 90 triangle. So if I were to label this point up top, what would that coordinate be in the first quadrant? Yeah, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Okay, and now I want to know my sine value. My sine value of this angle, 45 degrees, is technically opposite over hypotenuse. Well, if my hypotenuse is 1, it's just my y value. So my y value is just square root of 2 over 2. Which means that my reciprocal function is going to be what? My secant value, or sorry, my cosecant value from sine is going to be 2 over the square root of 2. Okay. Now my cosine. Cosine is what value? Your x. So this one's also going to be square root of 2 over 2. Which means my secant value will be 2 over the square root of 2. And then for my tangent, tangent is your y value over your x value. So that means I'm looking at square root of 2 over 2 divided by square root of 2 over 2. And what's that going to give me? 1. So my tangent is 1, which means my cotangent is also 1. The reciprocal of 1 is just 1. Any questions on pi over 4? Okay. Last one let's do here before we talk about the special cases. Let's do pi over 3. Okay, so pi over 3 is going to be this angle. Oops. This is pi over 3, which is your 60 degrees. So how would I label that point right there? What is the point at pi over 3? What is that coordinate going to be? There you go. Yeah, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Okay, I'm going to give you guys about maybe 2 minutes here or so. I want you guys to try and fill in the 6 trig functions for your pi over 3 that we just drew here. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to try that out. All right, so what is my sine of pi over 3 going to give me? Square root of 3 over 2, very good. Which means that my cosecant would be 2 over square root of 3. What's my cosine? 1/2, which means my secant would be 2. And then the trickiest part is your tangent. Tangent, we got to take our y's divided by our x's. So if I divide those out, what's my tangent going to be? Square root of 3, which means my cotangent is 1 over the square root of 3. Nice job. Okay, questions on those 3? Not too bad? Okay, these 3 are also not too bad because we can think about it in terms of the triangle as well if we're struggling with it. Now, if we look at 0 and pi over 2, 0 and pi over 2 are actually on the x-axis and the y-axis, right? So it's a little trickier because we only have 2 numbers, 1 and 0, right? So let's look at 0 first, okay? So if I'm looking at, I'm going to draw my little picture up here. 0 is here, right? If the degree is 0, sorry. So this point that we have there is 1, 0. Okay? So if I'm finding the sine tells me my y value, so that means my y value in this coordinate is going to be what? 0. Okay? Now cosine is going to be my x value. So my x value is going to give me 1. And then tangent is my y value over my x value, or 0 divided by 1, which is going to end up giving me 0. Okay? Okay, now when I flip these, okay, if I flip 0, is 0 actually equal to 0 over 0, or does it equal 0 over a number? Any number. 0 over a number. If you do 0 divided by 0, that's just bad news bears. It's not going to like that on your calculator, okay? You can't divide by 0, right? So technically, if I have 0, that's 0 divided by some number. So if my cosecant is the reciprocal of 0, the reciprocal of 0 would be some number over 0. Can I divide by 0? No, if you try it on your calculator, it's going to say error. So this is going to be undefined. So you can just abbreviate that with UND. It's undefined there at that point. Now, secant, I can take the reciprocal of 1. What's the reciprocal of 1? Just 1. And then if I take the reciprocal of the reciprocal of tangent to find cotangent, the reciprocal of 0 over 1 would be 1 over 0. And can I have 1 over 0? No, so this is also undefined. Okay, do you see how those are kind of special case situations there? Yeah? Okay. Now let's look at pi over 2. Pi over 2 is just up on the positive y-axis there. So that coordinate would be what? 0, 1. Okay, I want to give you guys a minute. Try filling out those 6 trig functions for 0, 1 using that special one that we just did at 0. Okay, my sine value, my y value here is, what's my y value? 1. Okay. What is my cosine value? 0. Which means my tangent value of y over x is technically 1 over 0. So what does that give me? Undefined. And now I've got to do my reciprocals. What's the reciprocal of 1 going to give me? 1. Remember, 0 is technically like 0 over a number. So what's the reciprocal going to give me for cosine? If we flip, it'd be a number over 0, which is actually undefined. And then if I flip 1 over 0, my reciprocal of tangent is going to be 0 over 1, so that equals 0. Okay? So that's kind of how your special cases work. Be careful when are you dividing by 0 or is it 0 divided by a number to then evaluate if it's going to give you 0 or undefined. Okay? So your homework is going to be, you're going to be given an angle measure. Okay? It's going to give you theta is equal to something, and you need to tell me all 6 trig functions based off of that angle. Okay, the second page of your homework is going to give you, it's going to give you a coordinate. Let's say I gave you the coordinate 5, 10. Okay, and you're going to tell me what the sine, cosine, and tangent is of that coordinate point. Okay, so my y value would be my sine. So if I said sine of this point, you would say 10. If I said cosine of this point, you would say 5. If I said tangent of this point, you would say 2. 10 divided by 5, right? Okay, so that's the second page of the homework. It should not take you a whole ton of time. Answer key is posted. Next class will be your unit circle quiz. So in addition to this homework assignment that you guys have almost like 30 minutes to work on and hopefully finish in class, you need to study that unit circle, okay? Practice it, know it, back and front. You guys got this, all right? If you have questions, let me know, but the rest of class is work time.